see. What's that audio like? I think it needs to be a little bit louder. Let's see what that's like. People will let me know, I'm sure. Okay. I think that's good. Welcome to my studio, everyone. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to be making a painting of my daughter's very favorite cartoon character, because we're celebrating International Children's Day today. And I've seen, it seems like International Children's Day might take place on a number of different days. There's one later in June and another one in November. So I don't know what that's all about, but I'm going to celebrate International Children's Day today. And in our house, it's basically always Children's Day. Our daughter runs our house already. Good for her. And this is going to be a lot of fun for me, because I have watched every episode of Peppa Pig probably in the hundreds and hundreds of times, over and over and over again. Let's do this up here. Okay, so let's, where should we begin here? The very first thing I want to point out is that there is a outline that you can use to make today's painting. And if you look in the video description below, there is a list of a bunch of different names. And these are all paintings that we've made by different artists. You can see the upcoming ones. And if you click on here, this is Peppa Pig. And these are the two main creators. We'll talk about the third one there, as he was one of the producers. But if you download these files, there's the only difference between these top two is one's a JPEG, one's a PDF, so just whatever's easier for you to print out. But this is what you'll see. You'll get, woo, a printout like that, and then this is what the original looks like. So this is the painting, or the digital illustration that was drawn by the animators, and then this is our version of it as well. Okay, so if you've printed it out, we're also I'm gonna do two versions of today's painting. We're gonna do the one as we normally do it. We're gonna try our best to paint it like this, and then I'm gonna invite our daughter down when she's back home from her visit to the nannies, and we'll see if we can do a version of this with her. So stay tuned for that. So there'll be kind of two, I might even prep that first one before she gets here, so you can kind of see how that would unfold. So the first thing is, let's take this and transfer it onto a canvas. I don't know if anyone is a hockey fan. You can see which team I was cheering for the other day. If you live in Toronto, you're probably really depressed, both because on Sunday the women's hockey team beat the Montreal women's hockey team beat the Toronto women's hockey team, and then on Monday the men's team from Toronto, the Montreal Canadiens, beat the men's hockey team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So both the women and men from Montreal dominated and won in the respective big games that they had on Monday and Tuesday. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to alienate anybody from Ontario, but if you're not from Toronto, you probably are not a fan of the Maple Leafs. It's like people in the United States, if you're not from New York, you're probably not a big Yankees fan. Okay, so I'm just giving these boards a bit of a sanding. The smoother the surface, the easier it is to paint on a canvas like that. And then I wipe this off on my painting clothes. Remember, I'm wearing painting clothes, not just any clothes to make artwork, because we're probably going to get paint on it, as I often do. I get paint all over myself by the end of each episode. Ooh, today is also the hottest day it's been in over a year here in Vancouver. Ooh, I am hot. Okay. So everything we need for today's episode can fit inside of a shoebox, which is very important to me. So let's just take all these tubes of paint out. We've been painting with all of these tubes for 81 paintings we've used them to make. So some of these are getting lower, but for all of to be able to make that many paintings makes me very happy, with about $120 investment. So if we look at this painting, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this printout onto the canvas. I'm going to show you how I do that. Get my pencil and some tape. You can put this wherever you like. I think probably right in the middle. It'll be just fine there. This one doesn't seem to have, doesn't matter if it's crooked or anything, so there we are. We put our tape down. And then we're going to use some carbon paper. There's a link to this in the description below to get your carbon paper. We're going to put this right underneath there. And then we're just going to quickly trace this out. The painting I'm going to make with our daughter, I'm just basically going to paint Peppa Pig all by herself. I'm not going to paint the entire family, just because that would be way too complicated and take too much time. And our daughter is about 22 months old, so not even 2 years old, so there's a limit to how much dexterity she has, and quite frankly, I'll be doing most of it and kind of guiding her hand, but even then it'll be kind of a fun little activity for us to do. Okay, so we got those. Let's draw Peppa down here so you could see what this looks like when I reveal it here. One of the amazing things about Peppa Pig is just how simple this character is and how much kind of emotion they're able to get out of or evoke in the viewer. Oh, what are we missing? Looks like we're missing her hands. Oh no, there we go. Okay, let's get George in here. I'm actually a big fan of this show. This is like what a difference cartoons have how they've evolved over the past 40 years since I was a kid. Watching cartoons with our daughter, it's so refreshing to see how much more positive the stories are, and how, like, what I love about Peppa Pig is how none of the episodes resort to violence for entertainment or to solve problems. When I was a kid, like, every single cartoon, whether it was Bugs Bunny or the Roadrunner, you know, they're blowing each other up, pushing each other off cliffs, and the joke is always that somebody basically gets hurt. and or somebody has to hurt somebody else in order to solve whatever kind of problem the or situation that exists. And what I love about Peppa Pig is there's never any mention of violence whatsoever, which is kind of remarkable when you consider like every cartoon, at least when I was growing up, it was just taken for granted that that's what it would be about. Somebody goes hunting and a gun goes off and blows up in somebody's face and wah, 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 wah. So I am more than happy for our daughter. I mean, obviously having her watch television is not the best for a young developing brain, but let's be honest, as parents, it's pretty hard to be on all the time, and sometimes you turn the TV on just to get a bit of a break. And yeah, as I said, it's hard to really do any much better than Peppa, because it's also interesting as an adult to watch. That's the other thing. There are some other things like Teletubbies out there, but it's sort of like mind-numbing, not particularly most interesting things. And so Peppa is great because it's her. Even if I've seen an episode dozens and dozens of times, I still laugh at some of the gags in there. Okay. Ta-da! So we pull away the paper and we've got our drawing transferred onto the canvas. And then afterwards somebody else can draw on this, can watercolor it. Could do all sorts of different things to this drawing. So you've got a couple of things. If you're working with a little kid next to you, they can color this maybe while you're making the painting. Okay. So let's start getting some colors on the canvas. Now this is kind of funny, making a painting like this. You know, this is a relatively simple image, and yet I think we have seen that sometimes the images that appear the most simple can be some of the more difficult images to actually pull off. And that can be the case in an image like this, where we have, you know, like some of the features of this artwork. If we just zoom in, let's zoom right in on Peppa here. You can see like there is a consistent outline. So the line going around all of the figures is consistent almost entirely the way through, right? So that makes it really easy to draw on a tablet or a computer to draw this way, but to make a painting where we have consistent lines all the way around everywhere is pretty difficult, right? So that outlining process can be a little bit time consuming and can slow things down. You're certainly welcome to omit that part of the process. That's going to be a little bit further down the line here. Other things are like the flat areas of color, right? So we see there's very little gradients in Peppa whatsoever. Everything is flat color. And by flat color, we mean just one solid, consistent color. So for instance, Peppa's dress here is this kind of reddish pink, right? And so it's not a little bit of pink and it goes into brown or purple or green and it's got some shadows or anything, highlights. It is just one solid color. And so that, in theory, can make things really simple, because it's like, oh, I'm just going to paint that color in there. But it can be a little bit tricky to get solid, completely flat colors that don't have any brushstrokes in them whatsoever. So we'll talk a little bit about how we do that. And then the other thing too is we don't see any gaps between any of the colors. All of the colors are overlapping completely, like puzzle pieces, right? So that again makes things a little bit more difficult for painters, because sometimes, you know, essentially you're painting in the lines right up to the lines. Now, we're going to paint this, and we're going to give ourselves quite a lot of flexibility as to how we do this. But I just sort of want to kind of point out that, you know, sometimes people are going to be like, oh, this is a kid's painting, you know, this is the fastest thing we're going to be done. We'll be done in, you know, a couple of hours at the very, very latest. And depending on how long you want to spend on it and what kind of job you want, it can take maybe longer than if we were to do a much more brushy version of today's painting. So I'll show you how I would do it so we get as close as possible to this image. But if you want to be a little bit more expressive and you're not so concerned about getting a flat color, or maybe you want to see the brushstrokes in there, then I think that would be a real fun way to approach this project, and you could certainly do that. When I'm painting with my daughter, we'll see some brushstrokes. It'll be much more expressive. So if you want to see what that's like, stay tuned for that a little bit later. Okay, so the first thing that I typically do when I make a painting is I put a warm ground down. And you know what? I'm going to do the same thing here. I know it's a little bit both out of habit and I think it's going to give this painting a kind of a glowing kind of quality. So I'm just going to take some warm yellow. I'm going to get some water on my brush and put some water in the palette here and give it a good little rub in here. You could omit this step and you'd be absolutely fine without it. This is just something that I think it's a great habit to get into. The more that you think about priming your canvas this way with some kind of underpainting, regardless of what color it is, I think it really gets you thinking about how to use color to convey feelings and emotions. When we did the painting of the Yoshitomo Nara, remember it was like a couple weeks ago, we did a painting of a little girl in this sort of Japanese manga kind of style with great big eyes. Remember when we did that painting, we applied a pink color onto the background like we're doing right now, because not only because I think like the artist originally did that, but I think he did that because he wanted to create a slight feeling of anxiety, that there was this really intense, almost fluorescent color radiating from inside, and yet there was this very simple painting of this little tiny girl there, right? So it's kind of, even though you may not even see it, that color at first, you might think like there's something weird about this painting. In this instance, I want this painting to kind of glow with kind of literally like sunshine, right? It's going to glow with warmth. And I want that kind of feeling and emotion to come through. So let's I'll blow dry this. Okay, so let's start putting some other colors on our palette. And you know what? I keep forgetting I've got this. I got this at the Space Center here in Vancouver. This ice moon-shaped or asteroid-shaped ice cube thing. I remember I have to wash it, get some paint all over it. It's it doesn't really look too asteroidy. It was on sale, so and I'm into all things space themed, so. And it is super hot. Even my studio, which is like probably one of the coldest places in all of Vancouver, is like room temperature right now. I often have my heater blasting under the table at my legs and feet. Okay. So let's start putting some paint on here. We're going to use... okay. I'm going to use a lot of blue, so that's kind of splattered all over the place. Let's see, where can I put you? We're going to need some white. I think I'm going to have to bust out my new white. Here's some red. About 50% of the people that watch these episodes have never seen me before, are new viewers. So for those of you that never seen me before, if you're wondering what these colors are, how do I find the right ones, check in the video description. I list the actual colors I'm using right now, and you can links to buy them. But I also did a whole 40 episode long how to paint series. You're welcome to watch the whole thing. It's free. It's available to watch at any time at your convenience here on YouTube. And in that, the very first couple of episodes, I talk about different colors as a whole buying guide for paint, which you may find helpful. Okay. So, we got this ready here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some paint in the background. Right? That's usually the way I go, is I work from the background to the foreground. So the kind of the order that I'll probably go is paint this blue. I may add a little, just a bit more of the same color on the sun here. Paint the green on the house, and then I'll probably paint the clothes, and then do the pig faces at the end here. I think that's, and then we'll see if there's any touch-ups that need to happen. And as I said, to get a really nice solid colors, I'll probably have to do 2 coats of the blue, like 2 coats of everything on here, and I'll get really nice solid colors. But you know, when we get done that first coat, you might say to yourself, you know what, I kind of don't mind that transparency where we see a bit of the yellow and the colors we're about to put on them on there. And if you want to keep them there, by all means, it could lead to some really interesting results. So I'm just getting some of my bigger brushes here. So just trying to see which one I want to use for. That one's kind of a good size. So it's this blue. If we look at the screen, this blue, if we put this on there, that's a little bit too dark. That's our cool blue. So we're going to mix in some white. And just got a brand new tube, so we'll see if I need it. In fact, I think this tube here is on its last legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it right open. If you're a small child watching today, obviously you want to get your parents to help you do any of this stuff, right? What's the best way for us to do this? We're going to need a lot of this blue paint, so I'm just going to scrape it all out of here. Or so we're going to need all of this white paint, so I'm just going to scrape it out. And we are going to mix a lot of this blue paint, so I'm going to put it on the background of my other painting as well. Okay, now if I want, I can dip into there. Okay. Today's where we're gonna get messy, right? I don't know why I just did that. Okay. So, let's mix this down here, I think. And let's just see the color that they've got in the background here. I think that's pretty good. Oh, I'm just going to mix even more. Make a nice big batch of it. Might be a little bit too light, so I'm just going to darken it a bit. If anything, for my first layer, it's probably better for it to be a little bit on the lighter side. Okay. And then to darken later on. And you know what? Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to put any glazing fluid or anything in here. I'm just going to paint it just like this. I'm going to paint right over some little details. I'm not going to worry too much about being perfect with anything here because I'm going to paint some white and all that kind of stuff here and there. Wow, I'm really going to have a lot of blue left over. I didn't think... Sometimes I misjudge. So we'll see. If I have a lot, maybe I'll get a number of small canvases prepped, and that way I can do lots of little paintings with our daughter some other time. So I just painted out the ears and I think it's like a great experience to try to paint a picture with a much larger brush than you're used to painting with. It teaches you about a little bit of brush control, about letting go a little bit. Here I am gonna go down. I think I can just do this with the paint that's right on my brush here. So I don't think I'm going to need to do any more painting on my background because it's pretty solid, that color that I've painted. Oh, this is here like that, right? Okay. Yeah, I can see a few places where it's a little bit thin. That's okay. So that's great. I got lots of extra paint for that purpose, should I want to use it. So, now I'm going to put lines around everything here. Let me just see if I can find these ears while my paint's still wet. Yeah, why not I just going to do this right here? I am a little bit tempted to do a version of this where I do it really expressively, but that might be a different video altogether. You can see, like, when, if I go over, I don't have, I feel like free to get my fingers in here and to kind of push the paint around. I don't mind if at the end of the day this is what my hands look like. I mean, we're only 20 minutes in here and my hands are already covered in paint. I like that. I like that feeling. So, okay. Let's see. What do I want to do right now? I think I'm going to set this aside for a second. And I'm going to prep this other painting here. So to get this other painting going, I'm just going to put a bunch of blue on the background here. I'm just going to make like a big blue sky. You can see I'm going directly onto the canvas. Okay. And then I'm going to set this aside. Okay. And while I'm right here, I'm just going to tidy up my paint zone here. So I'm starting to get a little bit crazy messy, which is not too bad, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. So let's mix the ground color now. So I used up actually a lot of the paint, so that's good. I was a little worried I was going to have a ton of extra paint. So let's mix this green that's on the bottom there. To do this, I'm just going to add some yellow to this mixture here. You know what? I think there might be just too much white in here. So let's just wipe this off and start it again. So I'm going to clean my brush off. All right, I clean the brush right off, and then I put it in my water so that the water, it's going to change color a little bit, but it's not going to be useless because basically there's just a little bit of paint on my brush here. Let's just clean that off. Okay, so let's mix this green. Let's do it right here. So I'm going to take some blue and cool yellow. Here's our green. I think that's much closer to the color that we see there. Let's take a bit more yellow because we're going to need it. Okay. So let's put this green here. And, oh, let's look at that. So it is a little bit darker than I was expecting. So let's see if we put a bit more yellow into it. I think I'm going to put just a bit of white. This is what little kids like doing, is just make a big mess with the paint. Oh, and it just got darker, Michael. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's put more yellow paint in here. There we go. And I think I'm just going to paint right over top of all these legs and stuff. Certainly using more paint than I normally use. I'm going to paint over these arms and legs. And at this point, the painting is going to look pretty, you know, gross and... it will look quite brushy and expressive. But if we start putting some lines dividing all, this is sort of like, remember when we did our Batman painting, and we're going to do a Superman painting coming up in a couple of weeks too. We got a Spider-Man one and lots of other comic-related stuff in the works. But you know, if you've ever actually seen like the printing press and you see the colors without the black lines, if you see the pages without the black, they kind of almost look like this, like very strange, and then you see the color and you're like, oh wow, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? Okay, so it's a little bit patchy in a few places. I'll blow dry that, and then we'll put another layer on it. Maybe, yeah, I'll blow dry it right now. So one thing I just did that wasn't too smart is I just get impatient sometimes, and sometimes there's little things like that are on the surface. They could just be a little bug or a piece of paint or a hair or something, and I sometimes get really anxious and want to just brush it away with my fingers. before things are wet. And even though I tell people not to do it, you see me do it all the time on camera. But it's also probably good for people to see that, because I'm going to fix that in a few minutes. I'm going to let it dry a little bit more. I'm going to just put some paint on the other painting. But there's never any, it's a bit of a like, that was a bonehead thing. But it's not the end of the world. It's just sort of like, that was kind of frustrating. What was I thinking? And I don't mind people seeing that, because that happens to people all the time, right? And it can be just super frustrating. So, and then that causes, if you don't know how to fix that kind of thing, it can feel like the end of the world. And I want you to know that it's not the end of the world. So let's just get... I'll be doing another layer of this green anyway. I don't mind, actually, this little bit of a darker color that's kind of shaping up here. Okay, so I'll just leave this kind of thing. I'm going to clean that up, and I think I'm going to make it, my background, look kind of nice and solid. So when our daughter starts painting on top of it, it will kind of have, part of it will look kind of finished, and then we'll have this very expressive thing later on. Okay, so let's just put this aside. And you can see, like, side by side, like, what is the difference in between these two paintings? Same, let me see, let's actually put it, since they're on there, on the table here. See if anyone can notice any of the differences. Even though, because these are the same blues and the same greens that I've painted down here. It's probably pretty subtle, but with my own eyes, what I see is that this painting is just a little bit darker. This one is a little bit brighter, and it's no surprise because we painted directly onto the white canvas, right? So it's using the luminous quality of the white to reflect the color directly back to us. Whereas this one, we've got this yellow underneath, and then we've got the light passing through the blue, for instance, hitting the yellow and then coming back. And that yellow is kind of warming up that cool color. So the effect is pretty subtle. I think we'll see again as we get closer towards the end of both of these paintings what the result actually looks like. But okay, so let's, before I move on, let's touch up this background here a bit. Okay. So, yeah, let's do that right in here. I think it's also a good experience, good for people to learn how to try to mix the same color a second time in order to touch up a mistake or a problem with your painting, as I've just done here. Another thing that you know, as I go when I'm painting, I often let the paint brush. I often paint with the same paintbrush, and sometimes I don't even clean my paintbrush. I just let it get dirtier and dirtier. And I like that because then I start getting kind of a little bit odd and unusual colors, because this is all sorts of weird paint that's still in my brush. I personally really like that because I like I want the painting to feel like it's really been like worked, you know, almost like a croissant that's been folded, you know, the dough over and over and over again. And the more times it's folded, the better, kind of thing, right? And I like that little bit of extra complexity in there. Now, I probably should have let this dry and then actually sanded it down, because it's still a little bit kind of rough under there. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do that. I'll let this dry and then come back to that part. But before then, let's just add... I'm gonna paint this background again. I'm basically gonna do something a little bit different than I normally do. I'm gonna get the background pretty much painted in before I move on to the foreground. So again, this is my cool yellow and cool blue. You can see again, like I'm covering parts of their bodies, and I'm not, it doesn't bother me. Because I'm going to put other paint on top of it. So, you could, I mean, I'm just trying to do the fastest way possible that's also going to yield the most even surface possible. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's move this out of the way. We'll swap it out with our first one. And I'm just going to blow dry this because it's still a little bit wet. Just gonna send my wife a quick text here about our daughter. Okay, so let's finish the ground down here. Let's take some of this blue and yellow. I hate that when you're just about done, you run out. There we go. Okay. I think her body, the Peppa Pig's body, is going to be right down here. So I'm not even gonna bother making a nice perfect straight line, because some of that's going to be covered, and I kind of like a little bit of the roughness of this. So I'm going to keep that. Kind of reminds me of the Molly Lamb Bowback, the kite painting, if you remember that. It seems like a whole other lifetime ago that we made that painting, back in like October or so. I can't remember when we made that one, or maybe it was December. It's all blurs into one, right? Okay, so I've got, let's just see if we can see any more similarities or differences with these two side by side here. Just looking at the blue and the green. I mean, really, it's almost indistinguishable, especially after we put that second layer of paint on there. It definitely becomes, you know, because you're covering up so much of that yellow, which again is why some people don't even bother putting the yellow down there. I would still argue that even then, we're still going to see, especially different kinds of light, and depending on how thickly you've applied that paint. If you put it on really thick, then you're certainly going to cover up anything, especially if there's a lot of white, which there was in the blue. It's going to completely hide anything. But sometimes there's like the weave of the canvas. So for instance, I see a little bit of the white coming through in this part of my canvas, which is, you know, I've tried to paint everything as thoroughly as possible, and yet somehow I left a little bit unpainted. If that was the case here, I would see a bit of yellow coming through. Now, it's totally up to you as to what you prefer. I personally would rather see a little bit of a color other than white coming through the canvas, right? Because then it's sort of like, oh, what is that? There's something unusual under there, right? Okay, so it's just that the white of the canvas is kind of so boring, right? So let's put stuff all over the plate. I'm building a whole series of shelves that are going to be under here, where I can slide things in under. Again, thanks to donations from viewers. Went out and got wood to do all that on the weekend. Okay, so thank you again. If you want to contribute to the show, there's a link to the PayPal below if you want to send a check or money order your prized thoroughbred or Lamborghinis, Ferraris. I will make room for them. Although they're very hard to convert a Lamborghini into art supplies for a painting class, but you know, I will do my best. So let's think about what we want to do next. So I think there's a few things I can do. I might add some white into the let's see, I've got two different, this down here, the house is sort of a little bit of a, I think that's warm yellow and white, so let's try that right now. So we got all of this paint here. Let's see if we just take some white paint. Oh, there's some blue got on there. Let's see what difference that makes. Some more blue got on there. That's actually not too bad. If I did get a little bit of cold blue in there, the only thing is it could go a little bit gray if I did that. That's okay. I think I'm going to take a bit of warm red, not too much. Because basically blue and red and yellow together make a brown. And that's kind of like what that color is. It's very brown, like a very, very tinted brown. So let's see. I think that should be actually pretty good. It's a little... I might... I'll paint this in here and we'll see. I feel like it's got a little bit too much red in there, but... Oh, I didn't even think of the windows on this house being blue. You know what? I'm going to paint this in, and then we'll paint... I'm just going to paint right over this here. Let's just speed that up, and then we'll paint blue. So what I'm really just doing here is just, I want to try to avoid, there's kind of a little bit of a ridge. I'm just going to wipe that away. And that was because I had a lot of paint on my brush when I did this. Oh, that kind of comes to a bit more of a point there, doesn't it? So let's get more of a point. Okay. Yeah, let's wipe that off. While we're here, I'm going to take some white. There's lots of blue in that. Turned blue. I'm just going to put some white in here, and it's going to really help this sun to glow. And I'm going to put some white. Let's see, this is my another white tube of paint. I'm just going to paint over this because this is going to be this white cloud. Okay. The good thing with this is if I want, I can go like just like that right outside of the lines. Paint over the blue as much as I want. I can clean that. I remember I was kind of, as I painted that blue, I was, you know, I was basically pretty careless, right? I was having taking quite a lot of freedom to do that. Trying to do this without having to turn the canvas, trying to get this. I've gone quite outside of the lines here. And again, like there's a bit of like almost imperceptible yellow coming through this white. I know for some people it's like, well, why would I want that? I want, you know, this to be nice, brilliant white. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I also think it is kind of nice, especially when if you wanted to print this out, you have the file, you could go to your photocopy place and print it right now, and it'll be nice, perfect, high resolution. I always think, like, if you're going to paint something, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of the human touch still there, right? Okay. And then maybe, you know what, while I'm down here, I'm just going to touch up, put a little bit of white, just kind of like this, over some of these areas where I was a little heavy-handed with my green. That way the next layer of paint doesn't have to work so hard to paint to cover up my mess, right? So this is, you don't have to do any of this at all. I just, I'm always thinking, like, how can I save myself some time and frustration? And I think this might do all of that, right? You can see I'm not putting it down super thick, right? I don't, because I want to preserve some of my pencil lines as well. Now, if I was more careful when I first painted this, I wouldn't have to do this. But I might also not have... I might also see all these tiny little brush strokes where I was really fiddling into these little corners here. Whereas now, I have a pretty solid, nice background that looks, you know, almost like as if I used a roller to paint it, right? And that would be pretty hard to achieve without doing exactly what I'm doing now, right? Cool. I think that'll make a big difference. And if it's dried in a few places, I can even go back over it with some more white and help knock out any of that original paint that was there before. And actually, it's not that I want to hide all of that below there. I kind of like seeing little bits of it. And I could see someone doing like a very messy version of this painting and really allowing for the messiness to come through and really embracing that part of things. Okay. Looks like. So what should we do next? Maybe oh, you know, the rays of the sun. That would be a good thing to put white there for as well. Okay. So let's take some of this paint. Again, you can see I'm painting white here rather than going right into the yellow, because now this is going to give that cool yellow nice foundation on here. And if I tried painting around all of this again, this area would just look like I really worked it over and over. And often one of the things artists like to do is they want to give it the appearance that it was really easy, that they just dashed it off. Matisse is very famous for creating paintings that look, you know, effortless, even though he would spend months on paintings that looked like they were dashed off. Because it goes back into that whole idea of genius that we've talked about, right? Where it just makes the artist look like, oh, wow, like what a spectacular artist who just managed to create that just so easily. So what should we do next here? We've got all this paint on different brushes. I think I'm going to go for the orange on the roof here. So I'm going to take, I'm just going to take this small brush and do that. So here's my warm yellow. Still quite a lot of water in there. And red. And there was a little bit of white still on my paintbrush, which I'm going to use here. Okay, and actually this color's not too far off her dress now that I look at it. So I'm actually going to think I'm going to mix a little bit bigger batch here of Mommy Pig's dress, right? So let's take some of this yellow and red. Ooh, now it's going a bit too peachy, Michael. So there was too much white on that brush. Now it's a peachy color. Now it's kind of very pinkish. Not too far off the color that we'll use for the pigs, actually, to be honest. So it makes me just wonder, should I just start painting Peppa and family here? Let's just see if we take some more white and put that in there. That's interesting. I was thinking it was going to be a little bit more on the magenta. It is a little bit more magenta. This is a bit too warm for that pink color. But let's see if I can still mix the roof. It's just needs too much yellow or too much white in there. So this is much less white. Oops, that's a lot of paint. And let's just paint. This should be more orangey than it is, but not too bad. See, sometimes I just use the paint that's actually on the brush and just hold it like a palette, right? It's easier to hold a little paintbrush in your hand than it is to... How did that paint get there? When that happens, I get worried that I got paint on a sleeve or something. Okay. Let's move this cursor out of the way. Lots of great stuff in the chat there. I'll come to that in a second. Maybe I'll take a break here shortly and take a look. Let's see. What else do I want to do maybe before I get to that point? You know what? I'm thinking I could actually... I was just going to mix a different color, but I think I'm going to use this pretty much the same color I used for the roof there. I'm going to paint that on Mummy Pig's outfit here. So this color was just warm yellow, warm red, and a little bit of white. So we have this, it's a bit of a peachy color. you've probably seen over and over again. One of the things that I just do all the time, I get in this habit of, before I clean my brush off, is just take a second to kind of look around and see if there's anywhere else I can put the color so that I'm not wasting paint and I'm using all the paint I have. So for instance, remember I painted white over some of these places? You can still see down here where it's a little bit darker. Imagine if I tried to paint this color over top of the green, how frustrating that would be. I'm going to do a second coat of this color afterwards, after this dries, but it would have been, I might have needed 5 coats of it just to kind of get to where we are right now. Okay. So, what should we do next? Oh, I just noticed Daddy Pig's belly, I didn't even realize was pretty close to this color that I mixed but didn't end up using. I think I'm going to mix it again just so people can see how I get my color, so I'm not just, oh, we're going to mix this color I mixed half an hour ago and I'm going to paint it. But it just goes again to show that you can use these same colors over and over and over again. And especially if you're not too concerned about making it perfect, you could have used pretty much a lot of the colors we've used already multiple times. I'm just going to use some of this blue I used in the background on these windows. Just while I'm right here, I put a little bit more white in there just to cover this color that's there. Now this is a pretty simple, these are just basically squares that are then divided into smaller squares with white, which we'll do at the very end. But again, just like with in other places, adding the white in here is just going to kind of cover it nicely. So get close to a nice solid colors when we're all done. There's a little bit of patchiness with this green. Now if I was to paint another green over top of here, even if I was to get really fiddly, you wouldn't see very much of it at all, because there's this other green kind of supporting it, right? But anyway. Okay, we got lots of brushes in the water. Time to clean them out. Okay. Why was I thinking I wanted to use white somewhere? What was that thought process, Michael? Why did I want to use more white? I'm just going to touch up some of these areas here. Okay. Thought there was something else. Oh, I was going to outline. Okay, I got to wait for that, so that's going to take a few minutes. Just put way too much white on there. So let's just scrape some of that off. Okay. So, what should we do next? Oh, I was going to paint. I got to blow dry it if I want to do that. So, okay. So actually, before I move on, I'm just going to use some of this paint that I mixed here before Mommy Pig's outfit. Let's just finish that off. Our orange. See if we can get a little bit more of a solid color here. Okay, I still see a little bit of that green coming through. That's just either I have to just put more of this paint on later on, or just accept it, right? Okay. So now the debate in my mind here is, do I want to paint some yellow back over these white spots? It's not, it really depends on what I'm going to paint over top of it. If, like all these areas that I touched up, if I was going to do very thin glazes or something, let's say this is the Mona Lisa's face or something, right? I would probably want to match these colors so that this color and the white are the same, and put very light bit of this warm yellow back over here. But since I'm going to be mixing colors that I think almost all of them have a little bit of white in them anyway, they're going to cover pretty well. But just something to kind of flag as we go on. We will just sort of taking a mental picture of the painting right now, and then we'll see what the final results are. Okay. I could also see, we'll see, I could see putting a bit of white down like we did for the sun, where the arms and tails and feet and legs and all that stuff are. But I'm not sure we're going to need it because I don't know exactly how opaque the skin tone of the pigs is going to be. So anyway, let's move on. Let's clean that brush. Let's do the clothes on Daddy Pig here. So I need a little bit more cool blue. Basically, it's like a teal that we're going to put in here. Oops, that's a little much, but... Okay. So I'm going to take this cool blue. Let's take a bunch of this white that we used before. And then we'll just take some of the yellow. So we get a green, right? Just the yellow. I mean, obviously, the cool blue and cool yellow got our background. We add white to that color, and we start getting this frosty, cold, very cold green. It's almost like, it makes me think of like cold Arctic water or something. And then the more blue we put in here, the more teal it gets. I think that might be pretty close. It's a little on the darker side. I could put some white in there to lighten it up if I wanted. Remember how he's like, I'm painting over this white now. And what effect does it have? Now, can we see the repaired area underneath here? It doesn't seem too bad. Like I might have to do a second coat anyway, but okay. There's something. I'm getting all these little chunks in here. I'm not sure what that's from. There's something. Maybe it was dried paint on my brush, or anyway, little chunky things. Let's zoom in a bit here. Okay. Yeah, the color's pretty good. I think I'll add a little bit more white on my second coat here, and then we'll have that locked in. And obviously, we're going to do outlining on everything afterwards, but. So let's do this, add a little bit more white. That was a lot more white. But does seem to be a little bit closer to the, or a little bit, I think it's a bit, well, we'll see. It's hard to tell because of the outlines that are on there exactly how bright or dark the color actually is, but okay. And I think I'm going to do a little bit more on her dress here. Just because I have all these colors are still really wet on my palette, so using them, you know, right now is kind of the time to do any of this stuff I want. Let's take a bit more red. I might just mix this color a little bit again into here so we get a bit more. It's a little intense. Let's take more yellow in there. Too dark, Michael. Come on. See how hard it is to lighten a color with a lighter color? You end up having to use a lot of paint. Look how, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but, you know, this is now, what, the third coat, and that's after I painted that area white, but not very solidly, obviously, because I can still see that remnant of it there. So much so that it is making me think I should just paint some white there and paint one more time over it, you know, and just be done with it. But anyway, so let's do I'm waiting towards the end to do the skin tones, because I'm waiting for our daughter to come back eventually to paint with me. So they're probably at the playground right now. So I'm doing all the other things that I can think of so that when she comes, we can do that one piece together. But anyway, let me just see. We got these again. Now that's a little bit brighter, right? I should probably have put a little bit of white in there. A little bit of tinting in here will help take down the intensity of that orange. There we go. hear them upstairs. So I think since they're getting closer, let me start mixing a skin tone for Peppa here. And when we've done this before, everything turns into chaos central. So I think to myself, how do I clean up my space here? Okay, here they come. I hope you guys are wearing clothes that can get a little bit of paint on them.
Should last out here.
You might want to take off those pants. And we could just do it with her shirt. And take that hat off.
I think she was really painting.
Yeah.
Are you going to say hi to everyone?
Get the high chair going. Okay. Before you put her in here, we're going to mix a little bit of color here. So we'll move this Peppa away. And we're going to make a painting, a Peppa painting, right on here. So let's just, we're going to mix some paint here. Let's, yeah, you guys can stand right there. I was going to, you're not in the way.
Edie, what's Daddy doing? Oh. Wow. Oh, you gonna eat that? Oh, no, no, no. Maybe you don't eat that. Did you get some in your mouth? Little monkey.
Okay. So let's mix a batch of paint here. Let's put some, we should do this right here. So the Peppa Pig skin tone, I'm gonna, just off the top of my head, I think it's this cool magenta with some
Oh, looks perfect.
white.
That looks just like Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig eating. Careful, please.
So let's make a big batch of this so that we don't have to worry about mixing it up too many times. You're having a little bit of bristles for lunch? Okay. So we got
Hi,
one.
Donna. Donna says, hi, Edie.
Well, let's mix up a bit for her. Where did I put that white? Oh, there it is, right there in front of me.
Dress.
Her dress.
Wow, Peppa Pig. Do you love Peppa? Do you see Peppa on the screens? No bristle eating. No, no, no. No bristle eating.
Okay, so I was just taking some white and a little bit of the warm red here. This will be for her dress. Mostly red, but just a bit of white in there.
Perfect.
we'll outline it with the... Okay. I think we should take those shorts off.
It doesn't matter.
And because that way it's just much easier to clean her.
All right.
And her shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we'll do is I'm just gonna... I'll basically be painting most of this with her.
Sorry.
And where's my Peppa? Here. Okay, kiddo. Love you. You're so goofy. Okay, let's sit down. Let's sit right down here. Oh, come on. Come on, let's sit right in there.
So cute. Edie is.
Okay, let's move all these paintbrushes out of the way. And, okay. Let's see. Which view should we go to? You're gonna grab literally everything here. So, what should we do first? Should we do Peppa's... Let's do her head first. Because... Okay. Yeah, let's go right up here. And... There we go.
Good job, Edie.
Let's get some more paint on her. Sorry, I gotta reach over.
She's like, my arms are not that long, Daddy.
Look at that. Nice job, kiddo. And let's put some ears on Peppa.
Thanks for all the nice hellos. Wow.
Okay.
Good job, Edie. She's like, this looks maybe like candy. I'd like to taste it. You see it happening on there?
Okay.
Wow. Good job, Edie. Good job.
Okay. Let's do the same thing. Let's get her clothes. Wow, look at that. Good job, kiddo. Oh, bless you.
It's a sunny day outside. Probably has some dusty sun sneezes.
Okay. Good job.
Wow, it looks awesome already.
Oh, you know what? Well, I think what we want to do is blow dry it
Oh.
so that maybe Mommy can just hold her
Why
hands
don't I
still.
just grab her? Because I don't think that...
Okay.
okay.
Oh.
That's...
Yeah. Okay.
Wow, it looks awesome already.
Let's put you back in here, kiddo.
Back in? I was like, she hasn't
She'll
had
go
a
back in.
snack, so she might not.
She'll go back in. Come on.
It's very long. Go back in
There we go.
there. Wow, Edie.
And then let's take the paintbrush again, and let's put a hand right here. Good job. There's Peppa waving. And let's do another one on this side. Look at that. Okay. Let's put one leg here. Good job. Okay. Let's get the red. Can you help me with this?
Good job, Edie.
put a big smile on her face. All right.
Good job.
Okay, and Mommy, if you could just help me 1 second here. We'll just get just hold her hands a little bit for a second.
No, no. Can we wait or not? It's hard to wait, isn't it? It's hard to wait. Good patience.
Okay.
Let's be patient. Patient. Patient all the time. Oh, patient. Patient.
Okay.
We're going to do one more time. You going to try again? I'm not very happy.
Oh, let's get some. It's gonna get some white on here for her eyes. Okay, hold your paintbrush with me. Okay.
Good job.
Good job, kiddo. Okay. And then let's get a little bit of black for her shoes. Okay.
It's okay,
Almost.
honey. Oh, my baby.
Get a little bit more black for her eyeballs. Okay, where should they go?
Gorgeous.
There we go. I can help finish off the rest for you, okay?
Thank you, Daddy. That was a bit fun and a bit overwhelming.
She did great. Good
Thanks,
job.
Daddy. Oh. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Happy Peppa painting. Should be Edie's favorite day.
Mm-hmm. Good job, kiddo. Thank you, love, for helping out. Okay. So let's. That turned out pretty good. There's still obviously a few things that we'll add to it as we go, but so I think she wants to finger paint. Yeah, we could have gone pretty wild with that. Okay, so I just need to take a little bit of a second. So to come back to here, we've got that paint that we mixed up for a bunch of these colors, so we can just take them and paint with them right now. But I do think that if I just take this pink and start painting right over here, I'm pretty sure we're going to lose all the features of the face. So I am going to do just a little bit of painting underneath these colors here. So for instance, the glasses, I'm not trying to do a great job of this. I just want to be able to give myself some clues. In fact, I'm just going to make this black. It's going to go a different color very shortly. I won't have too much problems with those eyes. Or actually, you know what? Let's paint that black. This will be interesting. We'll see how this works. because I'm going to paint this white anyway. You know, again, this is stuff that I can do. I don't have any concerns of my own ability to find these features, but I know for many of you, if I was to say, let's paint over the face completely, and then we'll just use our instincts to try to find those shapes again, that might cause like severe panic among some of you, even though this is a relatively straightforward painting. So I'm always kind of cognizant of that kind of thing, that to try to do this for people, I want this to be as stress-free of a painting experience as possible for people. Okay, so I gotta blow dry that really, really well so that I don't smudge that black paint anywhere. Okay, so let's the color that I'm going to use for the Peppa's skin tone was just our cool red and some white, right? So let's now paint this over top. Maybe let's zoom in for some of this stuff here. Oops. So you could see like some of this, like even like that patch, that blush on his face there. You know, because we added just quite a lot of white in this magenta, right? So it covered it up pretty darn good. That's black paint, and look how little of it you can actually see. Imagine if we just painted this over, your pencil lines would be gone, right? And there's little parts here that, but I'm going to outline that with a different color later on, so I'm not going to fuss about getting all that in. I'm just concerned about getting a nice flat color on the rest of this painting. Okay, there's Daddy's painted in. Let's go over to Mummy. And oops, come on. Let me just check and see that. It's a little on the darker side. I'm just going to add a little bit more white into here. Daddy's often a bit of an embarrassed and turning red anyway in many of those episodes. He's the source of a lot of the humor of that show. To the displeasure of some people, actually, surprisingly, there are some people that have decided to boycott Peppa Pig because of what they see as like constant fat shaming of Daddy Pig, which is kind of funny. Although, you know, after, again, as having seen this show hundreds of times, it feels a little bit like you can really tell that Peppa Pig is from a particular time and place. Like, there's new episodes that just came out in March of this year. But the original episodes are from 2004. And it is constantly fascinating to me to watch television or movies from you know, just 10 years ago. And to see kind of how things have already changed. A documentary I haven't seen but I've heard a lot about is the one about Britney Spears. A lot of my students at Emily Carr were talking about that one, about how you know, because some of them are you know, they're all much younger than I am. They're in their early 20s and teens even, and just talk about how, like, some of the things that the media did in their coverage of Britney Spears now just seem like outrageous. Just the way that they bullied her, and which at the time, I do remember thinking like, wow, that is like, they're really piling on. Like, that's surprising. Anyway, it's good. All of that is good to see how our society is evolving and changing. Okay. I think I could blow dry all this, do another coat in places, but I think it's pretty good. Let me just sort of... oh, of course, yeah. I'm going to have to do a little touch up here and there because I can see as I start doing this, I'm pulling some of that paint away. Now, if you don't want to do any outlining, then just try to go right up to these edges and to, you know, basically cover over anything that was there before, like that yellow or white, depending on how you approach today's painting. But I am going to outline things here shortly. Okay, should probably just zoom out a little bit here. Actually, let's, if I'm here, it's not in focus. Sometimes it struggles when there's, let's see, let's move that out of the way. Okay. Let's try painting some arms and legs and things. Yeah, you see, it might be nice to have a little. It would have worked better had I put some white down there, but I think this will be okay. It also depends on how dark that background is. In fact, I think I am gonna put white there. It'll just make all of this a lot easier. Okay, so. Happy with that, so let's just wipe that away real quick. And I'm trying to decide whether I want to outline first or just go right into these. I'm going to think about that. Ah, that tail. I forgot that his little tail here. Her little tail, too. back over to this. And her other arm. Now that I've got these little black spots under here, I can kind of find where those eyes are supposed to go. They look pretty strange, like creatures right now. Okay. Actually, I'm just gonna make these eyes just a bit bigger. I may, well, we'll see. I'm debating whether to actually outline the whites of these eyes like that, just because we're talking about pretty fine details there. So I always think to myself, how easy would it be for many people to do some of that stuff? Okay, so let's blow dry that. You know what, maybe while we're here, let's take a small brush. I'll even do a little bit of the outlining on these windows. I feel like these windows need to be a little bit darker for it to show up, so I'm gonna go and just get a bit. I'm gonna darken these windows. Might have been a bit too dark. I think I was going to darken them anyway, I just forgot. Because I'm trying to put white around or on top of this kind of thing. And they're too subtle. Subtlety's okay, but I think with a cartoon, part of it, the whole idea is that it's kind of instantly comprehensible. Right? Hence this kind of very simplified type of painting, right? Okay. Okay, all these wet brushes everywhere. I gotta do a little bit of tidying up. These things are drying pretty quickly. So I think too, when things start heating up, your paint starts drying much faster than it might have, you know, even just a week before. Which is great for many things, but when it comes to painting with acrylics, it can mean your paintbrushes seize up, and then you got a bunch of not even paperweights anymore, right? Just before I move on here, I'm going to paint her dress with this. This is warm red with a little bit of white. And I can actually, well, that looks like magenta for her lips. Like that might be the only place I'll need that. Okay. That covered pretty good. So I can wash these brushes. Oh, and George's clothes. So let's, I have this bad feeling that I'm going to splash paint around, because that's another thing too, when you get a lot of brushes in here, I find like it just invites kind of chaos. When you've only got like 2 or 3 wet brushes, and you're cleaning them frequently, you can kind of keep a pretty good handle on things. When you start getting like almost a dozen brushes like this that are all wet, and this is obviously because our daughter was down here painting with me and things are kind of crazy. That's why we have all these. I tried to mix a bunch of things and have a dedicated brush for each color. But when you get all these brushes here, I just find like it's sort of a microcosm of my brain and how confused things are, and it's just a little bit out of control. Okay, so yeah, let's paint George's outfit. George's outfit is a warm blue, as opposed to the background, which is a cool blue. So we're going to take this warm blue, and we're just going to add some white to it. Let's see, might need a little bit more. Oh, I realized I forgot one of Mummy's legs there, too. Okay. Some of those cross over onto the body. So, you probably didn't think this painting would take so much time, right? Or as I kind of mentioned up at the beginning, there's a lot of little details in here, and it's complicated with trying to get the color to behave in the same way that it looks like in the original. So I'm gonna blow dry this, and then we'll paint some of the pink onto the white limbs here. And really, we're just, we got a text, we got all these little tiny things here. Okay, so let's take our pink that we used for all of their faces, and let's put that on these arms. I would veer towards putting, really covering up the white and not worrying about getting an extra little bit on the background or whatever. I'd rather it be a little bit darker around the edges than have like a white halo. But that's just me personally. Because that little dark edges will almost sort of look like a bit of an outlining of your line. And so it can actually help you in a way, especially with this kind of painting. As for the outlines that we're going to put around the body, I wouldn't put white around those, because most of them are a little bit darker lines anyway. So, but if we were going to do some white outlining on some kind of particular shape, or like yellow outlining, yeah, then maybe putting a bit of white there would be helpful. You know, so little things like that arm kind of disappears a bit onto his belly. Just because those colors have the same level of value, even though they're different colors. It's pretty tricky to... We could add a little bit more white into the pink in that area, but then we'd be kind of playing with the, you know, the consistency. You know, part of this show is that everything is, all the pinks are the same, right? So it might actually call more attention to itself than otherwise might if we just leave it alone. That's a big thing when it comes to painting, is sometimes you just gotta, if you have a problem area of your painting, is actually just leaving it alone makes it go away. Paradoxically, like you think like, oh, I gotta do this and that to fix it. Sometimes it's like you just leave it alone and it's, the problem just sort of goes away, because what you do elsewhere in the painting has, you know, just alters the way that that problem or so-called problem, you know, it's no longer a problem now because it's counterbalanced elsewhere in the painting. And sometimes it becomes your favorite part of the painting. There's like a famous quote by Picasso saying like he would always paint, I think this is, I actually doubt that he would actually do this, but he would say what he would do is he would paint out his favorite parts of the painting as he's working on it, because the idea is that if it was a really good part, it would resurface. That, like some sort of zombie or something, it would just keep coming back no matter what you do. I think that's kind of silly. It sounds more like something you just say to be provocative. But it is an interesting idea of like how to, you know, to not necessarily be so precious with your painting. Okay, so let's put some white on these windows. I wonder how many people are actually going to paint today's painting. I could be surprised either way if there's only 1 or 2 people do it or a dozen people do it. It's always surprising to me to see which paintings resonate with people and which ones people decide to... I gotta touch that up. I mean, generally, the more famous, more well-known paintings obviously get more views and people do more versions of them. But there's been a number of them that I was like, wow, I'm really pleasantly surprised. And other ones that I'm likewise surprised more people haven't painted, but you know, that's what's cool. But for me anyway, I'm just painting all the stuff that I like to paint anyway, and then I just sort of let things play out, and it's just kind of a little fun for me to watch them roll in on the Facebook page there. So I see a big discussion about planting gardens and things in the chat there. I'm going to keep plowing ahead because I want to try to get things done as relatively quickly as possible here. Let's see, what should we do next? I've got to do all this outlining. That's going to take me a little bit of time. You know what? I haven't done the sun here in a while, so let's come back there. I'm going to use my yellow, my cool yellow this time. And let's mix a bit of white into the cool yellow. So this is for the inside. Give it that nice glow. And then for the outline and the radiating bits here, I'm just going to use the cool yellow right out of the tube. So we have like this nice flat background color. And again, if I tried to paint these and then paint all the way around, I'd still be here right at that part of the painting fumbling around, right? So that allowed me to kind of rocket forward here in this particular part of the painting. So I'm going to blow dry that so I can do the outline of the yellow while I got that on my paintbrush. See in the chat, Paula says, I follow your paintings every time, only to show a few that are presentable. I bet you they're all pretty darn good from what I've seen. Whatever you've shared are pretty good, so you might be a little bit harder on yourself than you need to be. Which is a common thing for artists, is being way harder on ourselves than anyone else is. Okay. So you can see it's pretty hard for, like, one thing I could do, if you want to, like, I could have outlined this with something a little bit darker even. Like like put a little bit of red, or turn this into a bit more of a brown, and then put this yellow over top of it, just to help distinguish it from the inside. I mean, I don't mind the way it looks right now, but if you really wanted to create a bit of a difference between this tinted yellow, the yellow that's got white in it, the same yellow, and the outer ring here, that's what you would do. I mean, there's even things like the lines on here. I probably will paint it, but you could get away with just leaving these pencil lines like that showing through. Okay. I think all of this is dry, right? I blow dried all that. They say as I just brush my hand over. I think let's do the Peppa Pig logo, or the, I guess it's kind of like a logo, word marker font there. So this is a bit of a darker magenta. Not all the way, not right out of the tube, but it's got a bit of white, but mostly just the magenta. So it's a bit kind of a darker color here. So just mixing that up. It almost has a bit of, it's almost got a bit of a purpley color in it, to be honest, which is not surprising because magenta is leaning towards purple, right? That's why we use it, is because it's moving towards the warm blue, right? You could obviously just omit this part and you don't have to paint it if you don't want to. But I'm just trying to find a rag that has this got no paint on it? I can put down here for my hand. Because painting text, fonts, and stuff is quite tricky. That's one reason I haven't really included paintings that do have text in it. I think there's a few coming up just to challenge us, but it's definitely on the slightly trickier scale. I'm going to add a bit of glazing fluid into my paint. Not a lot, but it's just my paint has been sitting here on the canvas slowly drying up, so glazing fluid is like adding a bit of water, but the water evaporates pretty quickly and then just makes the problem worse. Whereas the glazing fluid actually has chemicals in it that slow the drying time down. So it sort of waters the paint, makes it a little bit more brushable, which is, I think, what many people want with their acrylic paint. They want it to be a little bit more fluid. In which case, if you really want that, you can get fluid acrylics. I've talked about them before. I have them on the shelf directly behind me. Some of those lines keep getting thicker and thicker and thicker as I paint on them. It probably would have been helpful if I just went over and outlined things with the pencil again, because I can't see all of my pencil lines very well, and so I've kind of taken a few little liberties here. So it's things like this, where that G is now much wider there, and I think to myself, do I want to widen the other letters to make it fit so that they're consistent, or do I just leave it, or do I clean that up and put some paint on there? I think I'm going to widen a few letters. If you're going to widen any letter in particular, it would definitely be the first letter of a word. That's where we would expect them to be a little bit wider. So I think I might come back and touch up this P with a bit of white inside and just round that shape up. So I can see a bit of that transparency from the glazing fluid in there, like you could see with this P here. So I think I'll just let that dry, and then I'll come back and continue on it. It's a little darker. In fact, I probably could have put a bit of the warm blue in there. I think that might have helped, but okay. So this same darker color I'm going to put on the nostrils. You know what? I think it does need a little bit of this warm blue. So I'm going to take a bit of warm blue. Let's just mix this off here. Turn it into a bit of more of a purple. Yeah, it's closer. Have to wait for that to dry. So just this little bit of outlining, I think, is helpful for me anyway, because I couldn't see some of this stuff. Okay, still the same purple for these nostrils. I think that works pretty well. Yeah, it's a little bit... that's kind of dark. I think I need a bit of white in there. See, sometimes it's just like you don't really know until you paint it. There we go. Now we're in the ballpark. So, this same color I think works well for Daddy's smile and George's smile. And then for Peppa and her mom, we're going to use, I think, just magenta. Okay. Painting slowly coming together here. Let's see. While I've got some paint here, I'm going to paint the outline of Mummy's dress. This is sort of our darker, I guess it's very red. Let's put a little bit more yellow in there. So this is warm red and warm yellow. It'll probably look very red. Oh, you can't see that, can you? So you can see painting a bit onto the green kind of darkens this color, which I like. I feel like that helps a little bit. I'm going to use just the ultramarine blue, my warm blue for George's clothes and body here, I guess. A little bit darker than the original, but it kind of works. Peppa's, I think I'm going to use just the warm red. We'll see how well this shows up. I might even, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of blue just to darken this red, almost imperceptibly, make it slightly more of a crimson red here. You can see, especially, you know, as I'm getting a little bit tired, my lines are getting a little bit thicker than maybe they ought to be, but okay. Let's see, for Daddy Pig's outline, I'm going to take that. This is the color we painted inside. I'm just going to add more cold blue to it so that it gets darker, but not just pure cold blue, but all right. And I have a feeling this is going to be much darker, but oh. All of this outlining stuff for me always just like pulls the painting right together. And you can also do this if you know that you're going to do this later in a painting. You don't quite have to be so fixated on getting the colors to overlap, or you can leave even like little gaps and then you just do the outline over top and it fills up the cracks like mortar in between bricks or something. Having said that, the closer you are to getting those colors to one another, the less work these lines have to do to fill in those gaps, and so it tends to be, because sometimes if you've got you end up having to make these lines kind of thick in order to hide any of those gaps. But okay, that is definitely way darker and way thicker. Look at that. Let's just let that focus. Oops. Come on. I'm not too happy with how dark that is, but I think when I get other colors in here, it's not going to be such a problem. Okay, what should we do? How about Daddy's glasses. We got glasses and we got shoes. Everyone's got black shoes, so I'm gonna blow dry them. Okay, so got black on the brush, and let's take a look at should we go? Yeah, I think we're okay. I was going to zoom in a bit, but so with anything like this, it's just taking your time. The slower you go, the more accurate you're going to be. It's kind of like building, you know, a ship inside of a bottle or something, right? The only way to do it is a lot of patience. And your patience is rewarded by cleaner lines, more accurate lines, etc. So, versus when you get kind of impatient and just make sure this is okay. Good thing about like something like this is a lot of these lines and shapes are deliberately kind of wonky, right? It helps give it that slightly, you know, like as if a child drew it or something, right? There's these shapes, there's like none, basically there's nothing that's fully geometric. Like we don't see any straight angles, and things are always a little bit wonky, and so that makes it kind of forgiving when we're painting this kind of stuff, right? Now you know what? I'm gonna hold off on putting more of those black lines or black dots for the eyes, because I have a feeling if I start outlining them that they might be in the... I might want to save that till a little bit later. And I was going to put a muddy puddle too, but that's for a different painting, I guess. There was these kind of shadows that they're standing under or over, or the shadows that they're casting on the ground. I could do that as a glaze. I guess I was thinking about maybe they could be jumping in a big muddy puddle, but... Okay. So... Donna says, I don't always paint, but I find watching very relaxing. Thank you. So I think what's left to do is just outlining on the faces, like or the heads, really. I guess we could do these little millefleurs on the ground as well. Okay. So similarly, where's our smallest brush? This outline around here is basically our magenta with a little bit of white. Not as much, obviously. And I think we want to, oops, sorry, can't see. We want to keep things relatively subtle, right? So that's the original. This is going to be the outline. We don't want things to be pure magenta, and I think keeping the outline. Well, we'll see. Let's experiment with Daddy's face here, and we'll see how things go. Or should we? Let's just start with the top of his head here. It's not bad. It could be a little bit lighter. The other thing too is I like how these lines kind of go overlap other lines, like they don't connect completely, right? Which is also kind of a fun little nod to children's drawings and artworks and so it's turning out pretty good. I like that. Again, it's a little bit on the darker side of things. Oops. As I just keep. Ugh. Every time it's like I'm like, that looks good. Oops. Be careful what you know, don't speak too soon, Michael. So one side of the face has got thicker lines than the other. So the debate in my mind is like, do I want to widen the top lines. I think I got to do a little bit here just to connect these two. But I don't know if I'm going to go all the way around. Anyway, let's move on. I think this color's slowly getting darker too, isn't it? I'm going to add a bit of glazing fluid, a little tiny bit of it just to keep this paint wet. It's actually kind of nice that it's a darker color, but I've got a little bit of added transparency to it. So it kind of is darker, but then it lightens up a little bit as I paint with it. So I like the effect that it has on here. So definitely makes the painting process easier when you're painting details with paint that's a little bit more fluid, right? It's a little bit more just easier to get around the corners and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to put this, I think it is a slightly different color, but I'm going to paint it right over on these sort of blushes on the cheeks here. Yeah, you can see noticeably this is smoother versus Daddy Pig is kind of a bit rougher around some of those edges, but as I go in and just continue to widen these lines, Michael. Okay. So this is why I'm waiting till after you do this to do the black dots. Can be a smart idea. Is that way you can, when you're all done, you can put the black dots in the center, which might not necessarily be the center. That might be a different center before and after you outline it, right? I'm gonna do that maybe once. I can see if I can reach over here. once I've got these outlines on the faces, I think, are we done? Or I guess I was going to put a little bit of detail into the grass, right? So the outline just seems to really clean everything up, right? It just gives it that... It helps separate the colors in a way that just makes it look maybe more like the printing process in a way. It removes some of the, maybe the subtlety when you have colors side by side. You know, in lots of other paintings we've done that, and so you have a certain amount of like yeah, I guess just subtlety is the word. When you allow those colors to create shapes and volume on their own without the outline. Which is why, like, you know, classical painters often didn't do that. I think they would even see the outlining process as being a bit of like amateurish kind of thing, because it's a quick and an easy way to clean up a mess, right? Okay, that's good. Let's put these black dots in here now that we've got that taken care of. Mommy Pig's now looking up into the sky there, I'm not sure. Wider. Oh, I forgot that on there. Okay. Oops. Now kind of touching just places where it felt like these were a little bit rough. Daddy's beard is warm red, warm yellow, and a bit of warm blue. There's too much blue there. Get a brown. and Mummy Pig's got... Oh, I didn't even realize her eyes were a little bit more purple. Ah. You know what? I'm going to go back and also widen some of these lines on Daddy Pig up here. It's always easier to widen lines than thin your lines. So, you know, if you're going to have a problem one way or the other, I guess this is a good problem to have. Just a little tiny tweaks here and there. Let's get her eyes a different color, because this is the kind of thing that later on I'll be watching the show and this painting will be sitting next to the television. Be like, ah, how did I miss that? Daddy. Okay. And then her eyelashes. Are kind of wide. Oh, and then there's the antenna on the television because Daddy loves watching his TV. Can't forget that. Kind of give it a little bit of a curve to make it kind of wonky, right? Does make, I maybe should have done that with a bit more gray or something in there so it's not quite so dark. Let me just, let's now finally, we zoom out and look at the painting like that. Let's just focus that. Side by side like this. So, things that I'm looking at that I'm not too happy with. Some weird confusion in there. I know it's in the original, but it doesn't really matter what the original looks like if this paint, you know, unless I print this out and put the original side by side here. I need to clean that up. taking a bit of the same paint I had for the original face and just painting a bit out. Anywhere else that needs a bit of extra love here? I was going to tackle, oh yeah, let's, add a bit of white in here in a second, but okay, let's blow dry that. What is going on in here? Some kind of hair or something stuck in there. Oh, and some darker greens on the grass I was going to do. Okay. Oh, there's some flowers down there. Ah, just when you think you're close to being done. So I'm just going to take a bit of white and let's paint a few little flowers. I know there's a few different kinds of flowers in here. I'm just going to simplify it just for convenience. Now it sort of looks like there's a ring of flowers around them. I guess it's not a bad thing. It's just I kind of always want a little bit more variety or variation, but it's okay. Let's go into get some green, some little bit darker green. So this here, let's scoop up our cold blue and green. Just make it a bit more on the bluish side in order to make it darker so it pops a bit from the background. And just so you can see what I'm up to down here. I'd probably avoid putting anything in this area here, although it's very tempting. Unless I was to really build up a density of marks there, I would probably keep that pretty simple. Paula says, "Hi Michael, why you put a black dot on the cheek earlier? I have trouble to cover it up." So I put black dots like on the cheeks before I painted any of the pink, right? So that I would be able to see where those dots were. If you're having a hard time covering up, just paint white and it's gone. No more problem. All right. I also painted the eyes black, the whole circle black, so that I could know where to put them. Start painting these. Some flowers yellow. Okay, have I got everything done? I'm sure there's something that I'm going to go, oh, there's the shadows. Okay. Let's do the shadows as a glaze. See how, let's back it out just a little bit more. Okay. So to do those shadows, I'm going to take green, and maybe I'm just going to take a bit of the warm blue as well. So I mix this color here. This is my green. You could even put it a little bit more cool yellow. So basically this was cool yellow, cool blue, and now a bit of warm blue in there, because the warm blue is going to make it darker, since we're now kind of going across the color wheel, right? So, And then I'm going to put a bunch of glazing fluid in here. I'll show you here in a second. Let's put that there, and then just mixing this glazing fluid in. And so far we've been using the glazing fluid really just to increase the brushability, as it's called, of the paint. This time we're actually going to be using the glazing fluid to actually glaze. As funny as that sounds. Okay, so let's bring that down. And everything, I guess, should be pretty dry here. So this is a very transparent, darker color to kind of give us just a subtle, shadowy effect. In fact, if anything, it's very subtle. So you just decide how dark you want to make it. Obviously, it's going to darken anything else. So if I paint it over top of the legs, it's going to look a little strange, so I just want to be careful. If I had been thinking earlier, I would have actually painted these before I even painted the legs. So that's very subtle. I'm going to go a little bit darker. It's just taking the paint with less glaze and painting that on here. Okay, and that's a little bit too opaque, so let me come back here and just thin it down a bit. So this is the thing, like going around these little fingers and everything, that's a pain in the butt. And imagine that's what we would have had to do with almost this entire painting if we painted colors side by side. Right, and the painting would probably look, it would look very different. If we were really good at painting, it would be no problem at all. It still wouldn't be how I would approach it. I would do the painting as I'm doing the painting right now. I really wouldn't have changed anything, except I probably wouldn't have painted those lines underneath earlier, but that's not bad. Okay. Do I need anything else? Oh, you know what I was going to do? I keep forgetting I was going to say. Here's our original. This is the painting my daughter did with me. And I think to myself, okay, how do if I want to do anything to this? We missed the nose, so let's get some dots for her nose in here. So that was warm blue and cool red to get a bit of a purple, and I'll add a bit of white to it. All right, and so we had a couple big dots like that. Okay, do I want to do any outlining on this painting? And should we get a darker red to outline her dress? And then we'll be done. Okay, I think that's everything in the original Peppa, right? And there's, do I want to give her a shadow? That's probably, I think that's good enough, right? Okay, so this is the one that I worked on with my daughter. I like that a lot. Actually, ridiculously a lot. That's pretty funny. I might like it better than the one that I did all by myself. I like those colors. I mean, it is really, I love using really intense colors like that. That feels quite satisfying. Really just so bright and poppy. So let's back up just a bit so we see them side by side there. Pretty close color-wise. I feel like we got almost there in every instance. Obviously made some slight changes as usual, but do I want to touch this up here? I think I've got to. Otherwise, I just look at these things and they drive me. It's too much white, darn it. uncontaminated white. Everything's got. You know what? I was gonna. I gotta do that. It's gonna drive me nuts if I don't. I'm just trying to find paint on here that hasn't been touched. There we go. Okay, now that's done. Sweet. Okay, thank you everyone. I just gotta see these things too, painting side by side, and actually maybe just we can take a couple of seconds just to think about the color.
New, fairly steady state. That happened with the web, with smartphones, and I suspect it's happening with AI.
And if we do notice anything,
we don't know where we are on that curve yet. You never do.
Color-wise here,
it's possible that this is as far as we go. That the best we'll get is that an AI can generate a fake script. It's a novelty. But if someone can take that,
the identical greens and blues, this one had the yellow behind it, and this one is just directly onto the white. Being able, it's almost impossible to see any difference there whatsoever. But
see what it comes up with.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when this one, to my eyes, however, is definitely a little bit darker, an extra shade darker. It doesn't quite have the bright whiteness, the luminance of this one here, but there is maybe a little bit more warmth in the one down here, whereas this one just seems maybe a little bit more flat. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining me for another one of these episodes. It's been super fun doing these. These are going to go in our room, I'm sure, and I'm really happy that we did a painting together. That's very special to me personally. So if you have the opportunity to do something like that with either a child or just a friend or a family member and have them paint with you on any of these paintings, sometimes it's fun to I used to do this all the time when I was in college. I'd be working on a painting and we would just swap paintings with friends, and they would sort of go around the table and each person would sort of add a little bit more to it. And I do that in class too when I'm teaching in person. I'll sometimes go like, okay, everybody pass your sketchbook to the person on the left and then finish that person's drawing or add, and then I'll be at switch again. And sometimes the sketchbooks go all over the room, and it drives some people absolutely bonkers, and then some students just start laughing because it takes a lot of the pressure off, right? You don't know who's doing what on what, and then it's just like, let's just have some fun. And that is liberating for many of us, right? Okay. Thank you. We will see you in a few days. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of Father's Day themed paintings over the course of this next month. So, because I'm a very proud father, so we're going to do a painting called Proud Father. And so we're going to just play around with that, because we also have done a lot of images of women, even paintings by women of women. So we're going to do some paintings of men for a bit of a change, men with children. So potentially maybe you want to think about making one of those paintings and gifting them to a father or husband in your life. Or yeah, that father could be a son of yours potentially, who is a father. That would be, can you imagine how cool that would be for them to receive a gift like that, a Father's Day themed painting that you made? It's just, I'm trying to think about for those of you out there in the world, and just doing this stuff selfishly on my own as well. So thank you everyone. We will see you guys in a few days. Enjoy your time to yourself, and Donna, enjoy the gardening. Lots of stuff in the comments I didn't get a chance to get to. Yeah, thank you. And Dolores there, nice seeing you, Dolores. Yeah, and thank you for allowing me to bring our daughter on here and share this experience with her too, because that, again, is very meaningful to me. Have a good night, everyone. We will see you guys in a couple days. Good night.